are back for Permission Podcast. Listen, we're so excited. This is episode 6, and it's going to be live. We're talking all things faith. Ladies, y'all ready? What y'all thinking? How y'all feeling?
Yeah.
Y'all feeling good?
Yeah, I'm feeling good.
We got Keisha Young on the ones and twos, and Janiyah Qualls as another co-host. So, yes.
All right, so we always got to start with a little icebreaker. This episode is going to be all about faith.
Y'all see Janiyah's hands? They get fancy when she thinks she's talking about
Especially when
something.
my nails are done.
Oh, nails.
But this episode is going to be all about faith. So we want to kind of talk about faith as a lack of childhood. Our faith first story kind of started with make-believe. So did you have anything as a child that you believed in, and what was that story? It could be Santa Claus, could be Tooth Fairy.
Unfortunately, I was robbed a bit in childhood. I was not a Disney movie watcher. My mom never made us believe in Santa Claus or any of that. I always knew that my mom bought our stuff. We knew where she hid it. So yeah, I didn't really have I didn't like Barbies because they were not real. Like I was that child.
What did you do?
I was a grown-up as a little girl. That's the truth. Like, I hate it. Like, my cousins would want to play with. I'm like, they're not real. Like, playing house and all that stuff was just really not the thing. So, I don't know.
You didn't have an imagination growing up?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Did I have an imagination?
You didn't have like a invisible friend or nothing?
Definitely no.
Oh my God, his name was Franklin. It's all coming back to me.
I was not that person.
Nothing.
Oh, man.
Wow.
No.
You just was
I would love to hear your stories. I don't have a lot there.
Tell us about Franklin.
Yeah,
Franklin sounds scary. First of all,
we
why
used
Franklin?
I don't know why his name was Franklin. I remember there was like a kid that I had a crush on, like in elementary school. His name was Franklin. Maybe that was why I named him Franklin.
That's
so
good.
we would
That's funny.
go out and we would like
Yes.
My grandma had a little play set in the backyard and we would
So you were going on dates as a
together.
kid?
I start them early. But yeah, that was Franklin. Oh my God, I forgot about that. But yeah, I believed in Franklin.
Okay.
Wow.
I believe
For a
in
long
Franklin.
time, probably like 3rd grade, 4th grade. We was in
I was
there.
about to say 13. I was like, yeah.
That's real. It gets scary.
Right.
Keisha, who you believe in? I know you were an only child, so you had a lot of
Yes.
time alone.
I did. I believed in Santa Claus for a long time until I went to the daycare, and then they ruined it and told me.
I was probably one of those kids that would have
Yes,
done
it was like, it's not real. But oddly enough, like that Christmas after I found out, all I wanted was like a Pocahontas tent, right? So my mom set up a Pocahontas tent, and when I came on Christmas morning, the lights were off, and I just saw this figure in front of the fireplace, and I thought it was Santa. For 2 seconds, I was like, Santa! And I was like, Keisha. And it was the tent. So I think I had imaginary friends. I talked to myself.
Wow.
Yeah, I talked to myself a lot. So I don't know if it was a friend, but I think I was my friend. Sometimes you got to be your own friend. So I never had a friend that I named, but I was my own friend.
Y'all got me worried about myself a little bit. I mean, I started trying to think of anything childhood I love. I love Barney. But Barney's not like make-believe.
Barney is
He's a dinosaur, but he was a TV
make-believe.
show.
Yeah.
I don't know that I believed in him. He was just a show that I watched, but I loved it. But I had like a canopy Barney bed and all things Barney. I love.
That's helpful. 'Cause
I
was
a little nervous.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love Barney.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was like,
so
we got to
that's
have
all
like
I
a
had.
Disney crash course, so we just like sit you down. And
I don't
do,
like them today. You know, I endure them for my children, but
I'm glad your kids watch Disney.
they love it. They get all of that creative wonder from Travis for sure. Not me. My mom used to, she was my best friend, so we've been like that since little. Okay, let's move on.
Faith.
Yes.
And we started with childhood.
Guys, do not judge me on live. They are watching live with us. If you want to, you need to follow Dr. Jackie Green. They're on the ones and twos with us too. So
So where did your journey of faith? We talked about, that was childhood, but when did it actually click for you? There is a God. He's real. Let's build a relationship. When did that all start for you?
So this may be the reason I didn't have the make-believe. My childhood faith was very, very rich from a young age. So in kindergarten, I remember I had a teacher named Patricia Daly, and she would give us tests and different things like that. And I used to actually get up in church and testify, like, God gonna help me with my test, and I'm gonna make a 100, even in kindergarten. So I think that I really believed very early on because of the type of church environment I was in. It was a very small church, kind of storefrontish. They used to have my brother up there, like, teaching the Bible at 5, in
Norman.
6.
My
And
Lord.
I mean, I would sing in the choir, talk about how I love the Lord and stuff like that. And so I think my mom and my father introduced us very young to who God really was and what he was able to do. And so, yeah, I think I really believed in Jesus. Like, I used to talk about how he would heal my headache, all the things. And I was really, really little. So, yeah, I believed him very early on that he could be to me what he said he could be.
I think your kids get that from you too.
I believe that too.
Like I'm like kindergarten. I'm like no, but Josh be like Jesus does miracles. He has
Literally,
a
we were
miracle with my
riding in the
brother.
car yesterday. My 8-year-old was like, because we just had some transition with my grandma going to heaven, and they've been talking a lot about heaven. He literally said, like, you know what? I really need to go take a trip to heaven. Like, I want to meet Joseph. And then they started naming him. So he's like, and of course, my boy David. You know, my name's David. And I'm like, what 8-year-old and 5-year-old have a conversation like that? And Josh was like, I'm gonna meet Joshua. And Judah was like, well, I'm gonna meet Judah. And Josh was like, no, there's no Judah. You can meet Judas. And Jace was like, no, Josh. Judah was Joseph. You know, the man with many colors. That was his brother. And I was just like, what?
Whoa.
Y'all, I didn't know all that. Now, I didn't know him like
I
that.
didn't know that.
I didn't know him like that at 5 and
my
8.
gosh.
But like, they really know him. So I think it's just a real good plug that even at a young age, like my 3-year-old knows the books of the Bible, and it's never too early to kind of start pushing that stuff because they, just like they take in songs and the best dances, they'll take in Jesus too.
For sure. What about you?
Oh man, my journey started with Jesus. I remember I got saved around 5. We went to like a St. John Baptist church.
Yes.
And we would come, and I remember I walked up to the front and did the whole thing. But I don't think
Did you
mine was-
understand?
No. I didn't know what was going on. I knew I loved God. Like
Okay.
I remember being in like middle school, and I was in like a middle school sorority, and I did all the fun stuff. Did all the fun stuff in Alabama. And I remember we had like a church outing, and so we brought them all to my church. And I remember being the only one that stood up during worship. And I remember feeling like, is this weird? But this is what I really want to do. Like I remember being very, very, very excited about God. And even like going to high school, I was always in like the Christian clubs and stuff. It was always like a thing.
Part of your life.
But it wasn't until like I had to like learn it for myself that I was like, oh my God, you are real. And it's like in the back of my mind, I always knew he was real, but we didn't have that like personal, like one-on-one, like you could do something specific for me. I remember the first time I felt like I heard God speak to me, but not speak to me was when I was choosing a college.
Okay.
So I was in high school. We had like this college fair type of thing, and there were one college that I really wanted to go to. I really wanted to go to Auburn University, and so I go to Auburn's table, and I'm so excited. I was very eager as a high schooler. I go up to the table, and I'm like, "Hi, I'm coming to Auburn in the fall," and they were like, "Okay, girl, like, it's okay. Here's your packet. Have a good day." And I remember telling my mom, like, I'm so disappointed. Like they didn't talk to me. Like they didn't do anything with me. And I was like, well, if I go to a HBCU, I'm going to go to Tuskegee. So I just went up to the Tuskegee table. And they were nice with me and talking to me and all that kind of stuff. And then the next day, now I went to a predominantly white high school.
Okay.
The next day, Tuskegee was at my school. And that just it was never a thing for a HBCU to be at my school. Like they would have all kind of schools, but never a HBCU. And so I remember getting home. I was like, Mom, I think God wants me to go to Tuskegee. And she was like, yeah, baby, like that is one of the ways. She was like teaching me, like that's one of the ways like you can hear from God. And it was, I mean, ultimately I could tell you stone upon stone of how that decision was like, that was the first time I felt like, all right, me and God, we know each other.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
What about you, Keith?
I always say I didn't grow up in church, which I did not. I knew of God, my aunties and stuff, but me and my mom, we would chill on Sundays. But I do remember, because I grew up a dancer, so I did like ballet, jazz, tap, all of this stuff, and liturgical. But then also my dance company, we did like praise and worship. And so I remember like,
Y'all, she's a really good dancer, by the way.
I'm
she behind her
retired.
gift.
We both are.
That's all I got.
I am retired. We both are.
This shit.
But anyway, I remember like we would have to do solos for like Standing on Your Promises. I don't know, y'all know that song?
No,
y'all
ma'am.
don't know that song? Oh my God, Derek Coley? You know that? Okay, all right. So, but before I would do my solo, I would be like on the floor, right? And I remember like praying to God because I feel like you could put on, like, a lot of people, they would clap and stuff if you would just do really powerful moves. But I always remember I had this reverence to the Lord, although I didn't really know him like that, to be like, I don't want to fake it. And so I would always invite him into that moment to be like, I don't know, like, touch me or something. Like, I wanted to feel him in that moment because I did not want to fake it. So I think that was my first real interaction, even though I didn't fully understand what it was, of like having some type of intimate relationship with the Lord. And so I think it was in middle school or high school.
I feel like you've carried that genuineness with you in your relationship with the Lord. So I think it's beautiful to hear that it started way back then, because that's something that's always been, you're going to be true to who you are in your relationship. And it's made your walk very authentic.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you. So let's talk about that moment, right? So we talked about, like, you've known him from childhood. You know, we've known him in different ways. Like, what was one of those pivotal faith moments for you in your journey? I know you got a lot of them. But, like, can you bring us into, like, one of those real, that it required a different level of faith that you had never experienced before?
Yeah, I'm gonna do twofold, because one, I felt like without this moment, I don't think that I would have had the faith for the moment that is most important. When I was in college, I was walking across campus, and God stopped me, going to school, trying to make good grades, and I was really still kind of focused on what I looked like and all of that stuff, and he stopped me and he said, like, what do I want to be known for? And it was like one of those things, like, I had known Jesus to be the Jesus of my grandmama and my mom, but it was like an audible voice where God was coming for me to solidify who am I in relationship with the Father? Like, did I want to be known for the stuff that people could see, or that I could pray somebody through or be present for them? And I think from that moment on, walking across campus, it stopped me and solidified, like, no, I'm going to actually dig deeper to find out who I was really created to be. Like, what am I on earth to do? Because ultimately, I think we often have this misnomer that we only are a part of ministry when we're on platforms, but when we took our first breath, it was like God was helping me to understand with that question, like, you've been set on earth on purpose to actually make change, and you don't want it to be fleeting stuff like, oh, she dressed well, but like, can she actually affect change in a time where I'm losing somebody or I'm actually having a hard time? And so from that moment, I started to grow in my relationship with the Lord, asking the Father, like, help me to know you better. Show me what to wear. Teach me how to hear your voice. And so I started having that kind of dialogue and intimacy with the Father that led to me being in my final year of dental school with my very first child. I'm in the hospital. I end up thinking that we're going in for a gender reveal, and it subsequently turns into this 61-day state in the hospital, laid on my back, not able to get up to use the restroom, and being in a place where I'm fighting for my son's life. And I don't believe, had I not had that time with the Lord in college to really get to know that he was a God that could truly show me the way and sustain me, then I don't know that I would have had the faith to stand, even when the doctors were saying very hard things, that he could do something that was impossible. And he did. He miraculously made a way for my son not to just live, but live with no remnants of prematurity. So it was huge for me to know him like that.
I remember, it's crazy. I think that's one of the beauties of faith, is that it becomes so real that, like, you are always, like, transported back into that time. Like, I remember being at your mama's house. We were all gathered around you playing, like, Uno, or no, it was Monopoly Deal.
Okay.
We was playing Monopoly Deal right before that you got readmitted into the hospital.
Yep.
Like, they told you everything. You had to be on bed rest, and then you got admitted.
Had to go back.
Yeah, and it's like, I remember those times and just thinking about, like, just how it was such a day-to-day.
It was
like, it's like they didn't tell you when you first went in that your water was gonna break, and
Right.
you know what I'm saying? But it was
Right.
just like, okay, the faith for bed rest, and then the faith for this and this and that.
So
But
It's
good.
the faith to hear a nurse come every single day. It was every single day without fail. They were coming to tell you your fluid level's lower, your fluid level's lower. And we already knew if you got down to a certain level that the pregnancy wasn't viable, that they were going to have to literally take my son. And so every day they were basically telling me another death sentence over and over and over again. And so it's like, you say, like, how do you hold on to faith in a moment like where they're like, oh my God, like every day it's getting worse. It was a faith of people coming to surround us, to bring me cards. That's how I fell in love with flowers. I felt like they were symbolic of the Lord, reminding me that there was still life here. And I used to read a devotional. It was dang it, it's like Young. The lady name is
Yeah,
Sarah
yeah.
Young.
Yes, yes.
Sarah, Jesus Calling. And it was like every single day of that journey, God had a divine word for me. And I would read it. And it was in times where I could barely hold up my head because they were giving me medicine that would give me a headache. It would remind me of the Father speaking over me that I wasn't forgotten, because it was so tailor-made to right where I was. And to think that a God so sovereign could make a woman write a book that would be so on time for where I was. It just continued to remind me of how big God was. And it kept giving me hope that if he could do that, it'll be that mindful of me to send these particular people to love on me and send gifts. He could be the God that could hold my womb and reseal it and cause my baby to still stay alive. So it was, I think, a collective nature of people doing their yeses to make me believe that God could give the yes and sustain the yes he was giving.
Yeah.
It was a lot. It was a lot.
It was.
I want to know if Live got anything. Y'all got any questions over?
One question was, what is the point in your life where you have had to have faith for yourself, not through others?
Yeah, that was huge.
Jesus Christ.
You want to add in now?
Yeah, I think the first moment where it was like, because I think faith it's different when like it's a doctor's report. Like it's different. Like, oh, I talk to God every day. It's like, oh, I want a good grade. But when it's something
Your life is on the line?
your life is on the line, or something like the trajectory of your life is on the line. For me, that was when I took a faith step and quit my job. Like I remember, so I ain't come from a lot, and so when I graduated from college and I was making $75K a year, I was like, oh, I'm doing it. Like I'm doing it. And I remember when I first moved to Columbia, God said to me, I was working for a company called 3M. He was like, they are not the promise, is what I use to get you to the promise.
Whoa.
And I was like, so I knew like, okay, one day I'm gonna have to quit my job. But I thought it was like 10 years down the road.
Let's go stack a little money
And I was
first.
like, yes, I had a plan. I was like, okay,
Yes,
God is gonna
plan.
tell me to quit my job in 10 years. So I need to have a savings. I need to pay this off. I need to do all this, da 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 da. That was all the things that I wanted to have, to check off my faith or whatever. I didn't know it was like 11 months away.
Yeah.
And when it came down to it, when it's like, when God gave me like the final, like, you got to do this on Monday. And I was like, God, I don't have anything saved. Like I didn't expect for this to happen. And he was like, if you don't do this, you're going to miss me. And I had to make a very hard decision in the face of like my mom being upset with me for a long time. Everybody was, my friends were, everybody was confused. I had to take God up on his yes and say like, I'm going to quit my job with no guarantee, no nothing. Like I'm going to just do it.
Why? Why did you do it? What was the thing that made you be willing to stand against the voices of people that were profound in your life, and even the fear of not having? Like, what was the thing that made you say, like, I'm going to trust him? Like, was there something that led into you believing that he would do it?
I felt like the way when I say we were talking about it, me and God had talked about it, and I prayed about it, and it's a huge long story about how he confirmed it for me, but I felt like I had no other choice.
Ooh.
I felt like if I did it, which, later on down the line, it's like, oh my God, I'm so glad I did it. But in the moment, I felt like I didn't have my only option was faith. Like if I wanted to see what faith produced in my life, because I think there was an option for me to stay. Like I could have stayed working at my other job, and I could have still volunteered for the church or whatever, but that wasn't his perfect plan for my life. And I had gotten to the point where I just wanted to see, like I just wanted to try him. Like if you say that this is the better path for me, even though outwardly it doesn't look like this is the better path for me, like I want to see, like, show me that you're God. And when I tell you that was 3 years ago,
Ain't no big sense.
I love that.
Yeah.
To me, it speaks of you understanding, like, it's kind of like, I don't think that we all often recognize that the journey of you with school and you ended up at the right school, it was proving his faith in that you taking not Auburn but Tuskegee plays into you. Like, God, I don't know how you're going to do what you're going to do, but I'm willing to take the risk to believe that what I sense that's ahead is greater than even what I can see. That's what faith is. It's a substance. It's like, it becomes this tangible thing that you can grab a hold to, like, in belief that, like, God, I don't know how you're going to do it. Because see, sometimes people people think in faith you're going to know the how. I didn't know how God was going to sustain Jace. I didn't know how God was going to bring about this miracle building of 2-notch road for our church. But I had this knowing that I held on to, that the God that was able to do the Jace thing, the God that was able to bring the marriage that was perfect for me, is the same God. Like, he's been doing this stuff so good. And there was many times I had questions. He kept proving himself that maybe if he did all this, then he can also do this new thing. And I know even in the particular space that you're in right now, you have a lot that you can speak about with faith, Key. So I definitely want to give you space there.
Like, so this season has been, it's been one of my greatest blessings, but it's been one of the most trying ones. Yeah. And that's one of the questions too about like when your faith is tested, right? And how do you react? How do you push forward? You know, is there a default reaction that you should have when your faith is tested? Because I'm not gonna lie. All right, so I'm in a household of faith, right?
Yes.
Forward City is a place of
Literally.
faith. So our pastors have walked through different things, and you know, when me and my husband set out to go on our home buying experience, we heard the testimony of how you guys went in and was like, the Lord showed up.
Yeah.
Boom. So it was like, it's in our DNA. Give me that. You know, like
all the things.
All of it. We got it. And I remember there would be times even with the building that you guys would talk about, you would get calls and they'd be like, this ain't gonna happen. And y'all be like, all right, God, what you gonna do? Right. That wasn't my story, right? So when we were on this journey and we were getting calls of like, girl, no, like I had moments where I just was like, dang, Lord, you know, that it really felt deflating.
Yeah.
It felt like, man, God, you know, it just felt like it wasn't going to happen. And I had to believe. But as you said earlier, keeping people around you who speak faith is key. So, and not feeling like a failure because I did have those emotions. I think that was key for me to be like, I'm not like, I don't have less faith because I'm like
having a moment where you cry.
But to be able to be like, no, God, I still believe. I think that was one of the most crucial things was that after every turn, during every part of the situation, to be like, Lord, I still believe. And I was talking with one of our coworkers yesterday or the day before yesterday, and just about like how so many people want to see God do miracles, but not understanding that the faith part and like the miracle part is knowing that you can't do it yourself, right? That it has to present a situation where you have not, like you can't. And
so that seems like a no.
Like that. But that's not a pretty place. Or no, it's like, that's not a fun place because it's like it has to present something for the Lord to step in to do the thing that only he can do. And it's at that part where a lot of people faint. That was at that part where it's like I cried myself to sleep some nights, or I had to get myself out of the bed and cut on worship music and like, you know, just cry out to God. But I feel like at the end of the day, it was this intimacy that he was inviting me into. Man. Like the faith to believe for our home, which we now have.
Let's go.
Come on, somebody. It was not about the house. It was like the house is great. When he spoke it, back then it was done. But it was about this intimacy that allowing the, like having faith, it allows you and God to kind of have this moment, and that's the part that I never want people to miss. It's like not just like, oh, I'm believing God for this, but like don't miss out on the invitation for a more intimate relationship to know him in a different way. Like that's what I feel like my last thing of faith that I walked through produced.
And I feel like that stone of faith, like the next time y'all buy a house, like y'all faith is gonna be so like those are the things that build us up to be able, when it presents itself again, like the next time your faith is tested, the next time something comes up, it's like, oh no, he did that. And if he did that, surely.
And what I love is the presentation of this talk about faith is not cookie cutter. It's not just this on the mountaintop, give me that experience. There are valleys in the middle of faith being built. There were doctor's reports that said there's no way your child can make it. There are banks that said absolutely not with that credit score. There are people or even relationships that were like, oh no, you're not the one. But you have to have no's to get to the right yes, if that makes sense. And I love that in the places where we feel the least, we're brought into some of the most beautiful sanctuaries of oneness with the Father, where you know him in a better way, because ultimately houses and all all of the other things pass away, but what was created in the spirit between you and the Father, it'll never pass away. And it's the thing that you're able to carry forward. And so I like that it becomes bigger than just a thing that you're apprehending. There's a relationship that is built more deeply and rooted that I feel like is accompanied or embodied inside of faith. That is also important.
And I feel like God was very strategic in making sure that I was able to feel that in this. Because it was like we got to the very end of things. And although, like, my father owns a cattle on 1,000 hills.
You hear me?
Like he holds the king's heart in his hand. So I know that there were times when we were waiting on somebody to say yes or no, or whatever. And I'm like, that's easy for him. But I think had he gave me a yes 3 weeks prior, that I would have missed out on that final stretch. You know, and again, it's different for everybody. But for me, it was that final stretch of like, Keisha, do you really believe me? Do you really think that I can do this? Like, you know, I know you said, but baby, like, don't you know I got you? I want to bring you this far to leave you. Like, I got y'all. Like, so much seed. Like, when you say, you know, you plant seed in the ground and I'm faithful to water it. And
Water the hardest, all of that.
All of that. That's like, that's the part that I'm grateful. And although it didn't feel good, and I was like, you know, people who saw me, they were like, girl, you okay? I'm just praying for you. But it was something so sweet that I would never take back, that he loved me enough that he would hold off just a second, right? So not withhold, but just to be like, I got something a little bit more.
I'm producing
something in you, and your heart and your faith and just your assurance in me that I don't want you to walk away from this situation not fully receiving it. So
I want to add this because a lot of people, they keep saying like, I want more faith, or I want to be able to apprehend and have all that God desires from me, but they never want to step out in faith. Faith produces more faith. Like if you think about even what you just said, you actually came to know that you really believed him, or even gained another level of faith because of stepping out in faith. And Mike Todd said something at one of our culture nights, like, how do you decide if you're going to step out on something? Some people think that you have to be 100% sure before you ever try. You got to sometimes have a 51%, just like, God, if I believe you more than I'm doubting, I'm just going to do it. And you find him to be faithful in faithfulness. Like, it's not always on the pre, and many times we want him to roll out everything, give us all the answers before we take a step. And it's not that way. It was Moses stepping his foot to the Red Sea, then the Red Sea opens for you to find out that like, oh, he really gonna do what he said. But if you don't ever step in faith, you never find out what he's gonna do on the other side of you believing. So I just thought that was also very important. If you want more faith, you got to use the faith you have on the level you're on.
Yeah. And y'all teach us that a lot about working that muscle, because I'm like, I have seen God do some amazing things, but I've also been on the other side of becoming lazy in my faith.
Come on.
And just allowing it to, like, okay, well, the thing of what happened 4 years ago was enough, and you have to your point, you got to continue to step out there to work that muscle of faith, because if not, you can become stagnant.
And stay right where you are.
Stay right where you are and look at everybody else continue to move forward and stretch and grow in the Lord. But you gotta step out there. You gotta work that muscle.
And that's one of the things, like our next question is like, what are some of the things that can hurt your faith or kill your faith? I think that's it, not stretching that faith muscle, because it can, over year after year, seeing things happen for other people, seeing things believe for other people. It's like, why did I do that? But I think about the first moment that y'all were like, oh, this ain't gonna happen. Imagine if you would have stopped.
Right.
Like, imagine if you would have said like, oh, this ain't gonna happen, whatever. Like, then it wouldn't have,
It wouldn't.
like literally, it wouldn't have happened.
And not because it couldn't have.
Yes, that part.
Like, I think about if me and Travis had given up on Jace could not be alive. Like, that was an option. It was our faith that kept speaking up that allows him to have breath in his body. Not because we didn't have the option to give up. And many people, it's not that you don't have the faith, enough faith. It's just that you gave up too soon. And I would love to challenge you, if you feel like the Father is still speaking in the area of believing for a child or for a house, or even walking in a thing that God has called you to, put your faith back out there and don't stop until you see the thing that you heard him say show up in the natural, because a lot of times it's just that we stop too quick. It's not that he didn't have the fullness of provision there for you to be able to see what he wanted to do. You talked about things that hinder your faith, and she kind of brought it up, but I wanted to say it. It's a success of old that often makes people get very complacent and not go after I believe for the miracle baby. I got a baby and now I'm just chilling. What is your now faith? Like the Bible talks about in Hebrews 1, now faith is the substance of things hoped for. And I love to challenge people with that now thing. What what are you believing for today? What is the thing that God is requiring of you today? Because it's always something new. It's always something different. I would say in my life right now, God is helping me to believe that he can stretch me in greater capacities in ways that I've never been stretched before. And I can do them all well. It's kind of like, sis, can you have it all? You can have all that he's asking for right now if you're willing to depend and lean. And he's asking and requiring, when I feel like I have the least, will you believe I still have the most for you? Do you believe that when you don't have it, I can have it? Because I didn't used to have to lean on him like that. Used to, it was just enough that I could hold with my little hands. But he comes to the place where he stretches you beyond what you can handle on your own. And ultimately, he was handling it all anyway. But truthfully, I believe that's where he's requiring me right now. Jackie, when you feel like you don't have it, would you lean to me? Would you pray? Would you ask me to give it?
And that happened to me too, like a situation that like hurt my faith. I remember I was going through a season where I was like about to move. It was like a lot of things happening financially. And I was like I had to make a decision to tithe or not. And usually it's like not a thing, like I don't think about it, but I was like, if I tithe, I'm gonna be short on my rent. And God was like, do you trust me? And I was like, yeah, I trust you, because rent ain't due for another 5 days anyway, so I can figure it out. So I remember I paid my tithes, and because I had paid my tithes, I was like, you got to come through for me. Like, you have to, like, show up. And I remember we were getting, like, down, because, you know, rent due on the 1st, but it's not really late till, like, the 3rd. So we were, like, getting down to the wire. And I made a decision out of my own, like, God, I'm sick of trusting you, because obviously, like, you hadn't come through for me yet. I was like, I'm just asking my mama for the money. And he told me not to do that. I remember him, like, I remember praying about it, like, oh, I could just, and he was like, don't do that. And I was like, all right, but I need this money, so I'm going to do it. So I asked her for the money. She gave it to me. It was fine. I paid my rent, but it killed my faith. Ooh. Oh, my God. Like, just knowing that that's not what he wanted me to do, and I did it in my own strength. Now, the next time it comes up, it's like, oh, I can just do that. And it's like, that's not how he wants me to live.
He wanted your faith to be built.
That's not how he wants me to live. Like, he wants me to live in a position of dependence. And you talked about it earlier. Like, that's not comfortable. Like, being dependent, oh my God.
Or feeling short.
Feeling short. Like, it's like, I don't necessarily want to be in that position. But then I also can't complain when I don't have things that faith has produced in my life. Sure. Because I decided not to go there all the way. So it was a while before me and the Lord, I had to repent. I had to, like, really work that. Like, God, I want to trust you in this area. Like, show me. It was a while before we built that rapport back, me and God.
I want to ask y'all, because I know it's probably real in a question for people, in the times where you feel like you put your faith in God and he didn't come through, how have you handled it and recommitted to going back toward faith?
I think for me, it's been in pregnancy.
Okay.
Because I've been in several seasons where I'm like, oh yeah, this is it. You know, I'm believing. I went up to the altar, and, you know, and I've just been kind of like, all right, I'm not going to, you know, like, it is what it is. It's not going to happen. I think being able to be vulnerable again with the Lord about my disappointment, in a sense, and attempting my best ability to invite him in to show me that this is not the end, has been the only thing that has kind of kept me going. To be like, all right, Keisha, like, even if it's over 4 years, 5 years, like, I'm not done. Like, to believe that he's not done, and to be honest about my disappointments, that, like, I thought you were going to come through. You know, I thought you were going to come through now. Or I feel like I've literally put myself out there on the entire internet. Everybody who watched Permission Counts will be like, girl, I seen you down there. I'm believing with y'all. But every month it feels like, dang, you know. But I just inviting him into that vulnerability of some sort of disappointment, and being like, all right, God, like, you're not done, has been the only thing that has kept me going in the midst of still not seeing fully yet what he's spoken.
I think when I think about that, it's often been a thing of, it's same invitation, but I feel like the thing that the Father often does, and I've had this conversation with many people, like, who've lost loved ones. We pray for them to, you know, be healed, and it's it's this awareness that there are times where God doesn't do the thing the way we expected him to do. It's not that he's not going to do it or he didn't do it. It may have looked different in a different time and in a different season with a different man's face, with a different, a different method. I've walked through people that have believed for children that they were actually called to adopt and still receive their children. Like, there are different facets and ways that the Father wants to work, and the ability to submit. Like, I remember believing for this house and it all went awry, and me and my husband felt disappointed for almost a year, and recognizing and I would say, like, after we got the other house, I'm grateful that he didn't give me that one. But in the in-between time, the thing that kept me was like, the true belief that God is good. If he is good, then he's not withholding something that was mine. Either he's going to do something to bring that house back, or he must have something for me in the future. I think it often comes to confront a faith belief. Do you really believe he's good? Do you really believe that he doesn't withhold what is actually supposed to be yours? Do you really believe that he has a divine calendar or divine timing for you? Because when you're able to insert those things and reaffirm them and make them strong again, I'm able to be like, you're right, God. Like, I know that if you haven't done this yet, or if you didn't do it this way, then that wasn't for me, and that is for me, And so it's been always good to reaffirm the truth of who God is, irrespective of what I get, if that makes sense.
I think for me, it's always in my area of being in a relationship, because I think a lot of times, like, I have to not fake my faith, but I'm having to prove my faith to, like, people that don't believe the same thing.
Okay.
That like, I'm currently, like, standing in faith. Like, I know, like, I can have a husband. I can have any, like, I could go out and just do whatever I wanted to do and be fine. But because I'm standing and believing for something specific, I'm willing to wait. And that doesn't always make sense to everybody. So there are times where I have to be in front of people and say, like, no, I'm standing and believing. This is what I'm waiting for. And go back to God and be like, well, Lord, you got to come through, because
you
now,
coming?
I didn't, said all of this and this stuff. And it just goes back to what you said. Like, do I actually believe it? And I think, there are some seasons where I really believe it. There are some seasons where I struggle. Like, do I believe it all the way? Am I willing to settle on half of it? Like, all of that stuff. But I think the most trying part is me having to prove my faith and prove to people that, like, this is what I'm believing for. And sometimes I get to a point where I'm just like, man, I'm sick of this. Like, I just wish you would just come through so that I could show the world, like, this is what I was waiting on. Like, this is what, I've been believing God for all the time. Like, you've done it with my job. You've done it with, all these other parts of my life. Like, it just, the waiting part, it's hard.
I agree with you. Like, that process of standing. One thing I just want to submit: you don't have to prove anything.
Yep.
You don't have to prove anything. God is God, irrespective of if people believe that or if they believe He gonna come through for you or not. No different than when people misunderstood about your job or your college or whatever. He's the same God. He's always gonna uphold His own name. We don't have the responsibility to do that. But what I do love that you brought to the table is that He's not afraid of our doubts. He's not afraid of you coming back and being like, Daddy, there was Sunday I believe firmly, but Monday I have some questions and I feel a little vulnerable here. And He's okay even in ministering there and still calling you a woman of faith. You don't get discounted as a woman of faith just because you have a moment where the God of faith has to speak to your faith. Like He can be the one that helps your unbelief. Even and still be called a woman of faith. And so I think a lot of people discount themselves like, yeah, my faith just, all over the. No, it's just the real life process of you needing a God of faith to always continue to speak and, speak that better word. So, yeah.
That's very helpful.
Live, got any questions? Okay.
These people over here been talking. One question is faith a feeling or is it that discernment after a thought or a belief?
Is faith a feeling or discernment after a thought or? I think it is. It could be a mixture of both. I don't think that it is one or the other. There are times when I will say the word like I sense or I know. So that is a feeling to some degree. But many people term that sense or feeling as discernment. It is this way in which you're like, I know this didn't come from myself. This is beyond anything that I would think about or I would believe for. It's almost a knowing. And people do generally in the Christian spectrum call that discernment. So yeah, I would say that it It is what people could call a feeling in the natural, but naturally people call that in the Christian spectrum discernment.
I agree. I think conviction.
Yeah.
Something.
It's an internal knowing.
I felt like that with my move to Charlotte.
Yeah.
I would drive to work every day when I was living in Atlanta, and I'd be like, this don't feel like this is it. I'm like, I don't know. I feel like I'm supposed to be moving somewhere, but I didn't know where, it was. But I was like, every day I would drive in, I'm like, I don't know, this don't seem like it's it. And when I came to visit you in Charlotte, helping with the wedding and stuff, and y'all took me downtown, I was like, this is it. I was like, this is the place. And so from there, I grabbed hold to a conviction of like, oh, I'm moving to Charlotte. But it was kind of like these pieces of like little by little that kind of helped to come together, and kind of in that moment, it was like, this is that thing that I have been feeling, sensing, discerning. But yeah.
Many people that are strong discerners call themselves fillers, because most often when we've gone into buildings or bought houses, my husband would always say, I'm going to go get Jackie so that she can walk in here to fill it. It's because I naturally discern, and it's a knowing and a thing that you sense. So I want that person to know that neither is right or wrong. What they're sensing is pretty much the same thing.
I think prayer is important too. Just going to the Father to see what to believe for, because there was a lot of times where we have things, it's like, oh, my natural, like, well, not natural desire, but then something that I want, like I desire to have like a bigger house or whatever. I desire to have all of these things, but is that necessarily what God is speaking over my life in this season? But it's if you go to him in prayer, he's able to give us what to want and what to have faith for. It's those things that he's like aligned our life, like, I'm showing you this is what I have for you, for your future. So it's not like I'm just grabbing stuff like, oh, like that's cute, I like that. Like,
I'm just gonna go after
this, but it's more so I have faith for what he wants for me.
That's really good. And a telltale sign in regards to what the Father is desiring for you to have faith for and want is the people he puts you in proximity to and around. That's something that's huge. Like you talk about Tuskegee just showing up, or this person just ending up in my life, or or your life ending up aligning and going in the same path with people. I would say don't be blinded to the things that he places you around, because it's a huge indication as to what he wants to bring forth in your life, for sure.
Amen.
Any other? We'll take one more.
How do you cope with having faith for something that doesn't work out the way you expected?
How do you cope?
I think that Keisha kind of hit on it earlier. Vulnerability and honesty is so key. God already knows, and I think that's something that we kind of forget sometimes. He's so aware, even when you don't say you're disappointed, or when you're kind of isolating yourself, or you're running from him. I think the best thing you can do in a moment where you feel like, man, I feel let down, is be honest with be honest with God. Like, this is where I am and this is how I feel. He's not afraid of how you feel. He is so open and willing to minister to whatever you're going through. I think it's the quickest and best way, and talking to wise counsel, because there are many times, and even a lot of the things that I was able to share with Keisha in her journey with housing, I lived through. I lived through the disappointment of them like, oh, I need this other thing, and I'm like, oh my God, it's not going to work out. And so when she was having moments, I was able to say to her what God said to me, and be able to help her live through more quickly the thing that I might have lived through longer. And so I think having great counsel around you can be very helpful in the times of you walking out faith for things that people may have walked through already with you.
I agree.
That's good.
Any other things? Y'all feel clear? Well, I hope that this has been helpful for your faith. For those watching, my prayer is that you don't allow faith to live just at this table or in what you've heard or just in likes and comments. My prayer is that today you would pause to ask the Lord, God, what is it that you want me to have faith for today? And then pray and ask him to walk on the journey with you of actually being able to live that out. If